back, everyone, to From Status Quo to Solitude, the podcast where we explore leadership, growth, and the human side of our professional lives. Every generation experiences a technical shift that changes how we work, whether it was the printing press that changed access to the knowledge, the industrial revolution that changed physical labor, or the internet that changed the way we see information, right? And now artificial intelligence. It may be different because it will change how we think, or it's already starting to change how we think, right? AI is already helping us write code, analyze, diagnose, recommend, create, and increasingly decide, which raises some uncomfortable questions, right? If machines become better at thinking, what becomes more valuable about being human then? And how do leaders know when to trust AI and when not to? Are we becoming more capable or simply more dependent on machines? And these are the exact questions that we're going to be exploring today. And my guest today is the famed Allen Westley, Director of Cyber Intelligence at L3Harris Technologies, an educator, a cybersecurity leader, and someone who has spent years thinking about the intersection of technology, human judgment, and organizational risk. So Allen, welcome to the podcast. Really excited to have you, and thank you so much for joining me.
Well, Dhwani, the pleasure is all mine and the honor is mine. I watched you work, watched you navigate the political scene at L3Harris. We were both chairs for our ERGs, which was an amazing experience. And it's just been a pleasure to learn from you as well. I just want to say, before we get started, everything I'm saying here these are my own opinions and they don't reflect those of L3Harris. I am a business owner. I'm a solopreneur. I run Cyber Explorer. I do a lot of content creation around cybersecurity. And a little history of me, I've been in technology for as long as I can remember, from the time that my mom was a computer operator back in the 60s. And she would bring us into the computer room where she was key punching on these big machines. And I caught the bug. I've been in a technology role in some shape or form or another almost my whole life.
Unbelievable. That's a long career. So definitely there's a lot to learn from you, and looking forward to doing exactly that today. So Allen, cybersecurity has always been about anticipating threats before everyone else sees them, right? And then AI also feels similar. Some people see enormous opportunity and others see enormous risk. And I'd love to begin at the leadership level before we talk about individual careers, etc. So many leaders are under pressure to adopt AI quickly. In that situation, what concerns you more? Organizations that are moving too slowly or organizations that are moving too fast without understanding the second order consequences?
That answer depends on. That's a good question. The answer really depends on where you land right now in the business ecosystem. If you're in a defense contracting side of the house, that is not a binary choice. You have to move fast responsibly, which almost sounds like diametrically opposed objectives, but they kind of have to coexist. You have to hold both those things in your head at once. If you're a business owner and you're just in the commercial side of the house, I think you have a little more latitude to be a little more cautious. And I think sometimes we treat this on a commercial side. That's one of the benefits, and you know this as well. We wear two hats, right? When I'm on my business side of the house, I see people and they look at this technology. When we talk about AI, they look at it like it's magic. And there's, a famous saying that magic is just technology you haven't figured out yet. It really is. But, I think, it really it depends on what side of the fence you're on. But if I'm saying from the lens that I have working with defense contracting, we don't have a choice. It's not binary. We have to do both, and we have to be responsible. And that's where the saying where you say brakes actually help you go faster because they prevent you from driving into dangerous curves blindfolded.
Yeah, 100%, and that is interesting because underneath the answer lies another challenge, right? Even if organizations move thoughtfully, leadership still has to make the decisions, and a lot of those decisions are AI assisted. So it's a catch-22, right? But something you said made me laugh because I started my career as an IT person, you know. Even as I was in college, I was getting an IT degree, and then I got into IT, and my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, thought I was a genius and I knew so much about IT. And then, you know, a couple of years into my career, I went and shifted gears into aerospace, and you know, I kind of started to fall behind on all the you know, IT innovations, and he got into it. And then about 5-6 years later, he's like, oh man, and he started making fun of me. He's like, oh, all the stuff you were doing was just average, you know. I thought it was rocket science, and now that I've been doing it for a while, it's, you know,
Yeah, right. It's not
yeah,
magic.
all that. Yep, exactly. So, okay, well, so let's move on. For years, we've been told AI is going to help us make better decisions, right? But when AI assisted decisions go wrong, nobody seems willing to own them. So, are we creating a future where accountability becomes increasingly difficult to assign?
I think that's very insightful, intuitive, and I think uh, preemptively primarily the answer is yes when we first look at it right now. But I think there's enough of us in society that critical thinkers like yourself and like many other people across different parts of business, they don't accept the first answer that shows up. We need more of that, right? We need more of that. We need people that are actually exercising their critical thinking skills so there isn't this cognitive offloading that happens, right? Society in general, you know, we look for leaders, right? We want to abdicate that responsibility of hard thinking onto people that we deem to be, you know, better at it, or you know, someone that we want to follow. And what's dangerous about that is because that kind of mentality, it rides on the surface, and I think we all carry some of that. And depending on your workload, when it gets stressful, it's easy to defer to the answer that's, you know, quick. So I think we have to have more discipline, more internal discipline, and more introspect to know or to question when we get an answer really fast. Does it really fit the narrative that we're going after, our objective, or is it just being handed to us because it's convenient? And so being able to have that discernment to be able to tell the difference, I think is it's critically important. And it's going to get even more important. And to your point of leadership, right? When we talk about leadership, inside of any organization, there's a fiduciary responsibility to know what your AI risk exposure is. That's board level talk that I think needs to start happening if it's not already happening. You can't rely on, oh, AI, that's an IT thing, right? But no, it permeates every part of your business. And I've seen this with looking across industry that it's getting into your finance area, it's getting into HR, it's becoming a part of your IT infrastructure, it's becoming a part of every part of your business. And so I think, you know, yes, it's a board responsibility, it's a leadership responsibility when it comes to who owns the decision at the end of the day. You can't stand up in front of a congressional body and say the machine made me do it.
Yeah. You
It's
know,
not.
as you were talking, I was thinking about this because I have seen instances or read stories about where leaders throw the blame on AI, and I really wanted to get your opinion on, you know, is the real risk technology, or is it the leaders using AI as a shield from responsibility? So I guess the answer could be both, but you know, I'd love to hear your take on that.
I think it depends on which sector you're working in, which industry you're working in, and the consequences that come with not having accountability, right? You know, I'll just, you know, if the bomb lands in the wrong place, you're not going to be able to stand in front of someone and say, well, the machine did it, right? Somebody had to initiate that plan. Somebody had to sign off on it. And one of the interesting things we were talking about when we met a few weeks ago was the fact that, you know, it's real easy to deflect and defer, or to hide in the ambiguity of this algorithm or the AI and the machine learning. So we have to take ownership as humans. We always say, hey, we want to have humans in the loop. Okay, well then be in the loop.
Yes.
That's just my perspective of it.
Yeah, no, it's a great perspective. And it really also makes me think beyond organizations as well, right? Leadership decisions are one thing, but what happens when millions of individuals begin outsourcing everyday thinking, right? Like, where is the world going to end up in a few years when everybody starts using AI? It's just sometimes
Yeah,
exciting and sometimes nerve-wracking to think.
absolutely. I had a series that I was running on my LinkedIn site and on my Cyber Explorer site where I did a word of the day. And one of the words of the day I did was talking about human integrity, what it meant to be human, right? And I used the story of my mom when she was in the military. She was in the Women's Army Corps, and she was going to her first duty assignment station. And she stopped. She was on a Greyhound bus. The bus stopped, and she went into a White Castle restaurant, and she walked up to the counter, and before she could say anything, the waitress looked at her and said, "We don't serve no N words here," right? Just like that, and my mom didn't miss a beat, and she said, "Well, it's a good thing because I wasn't going to order any." And and so the restaurant owner, he heard that and he came over and he said, "Little lady, that's the first time I've ever heard anyone say that." And they served her burger, fries, and a drink. But the larger story here is we show up when we're not expected to, right? We do things that betray our inner beliefs, right? And so that's one of the characteristics of being human, that's not easy for systems to replicate, right? We're very messy, we're ambiguous,
Yeah.
and we may say one thing and hold one belief and do something completely different depending on what the situation calls for.
That's a powerful story. I loved it. I must have missed that in your series, but loved hearing about it, and really good message there. Hey, so most conversations around AI focus on productivity, right? Very few discuss what happens when people stop exercising their own judgment, like your mom did, and how she, was so quick-witted in that moment of, pressure. Do you already see evidence that AI is making some professional cognitively weaker, and how do we guard against that?
I do see evidence of that. I see when just reading some of the content. I'll be the first one to admit I use AI to help me write, but I've been writing long before AI came along, right? I have a process. Writing is a process, and I'll be the first person to go up against the person that says, AI slop, somebody's not, or they're using AI and they're cheating. I'm like, it's a process, and now it's a digital process. You use it as a tool, right? And you use it responsibly, and it helps you accelerate. It helps you be faster. So that is the world we live in today. So using AI responsibly is one of the things that we have to focus in on. I think I might have drifted off your question a little bit.
No, no, it's right on the cusp of where I want to head next, right? I mean, just listening to you, I'm reminded about why I named this podcast From Status Quo to Solitude, right? Solitude isn't loneliness. It's where we wrestle with uncertainty, where, we develop judgment, where wisdom is formed. So AI promises us, that it's going to remove friction and deliver answers instantly. But are we at risk of losing something essential if we no longer have to sit with uncertainty, right?
That is interesting. I call it interpretive displacement, right? Where the machine is figuring you out faster than you can figure yourself out, and then it takes the cue, and then it starts making decisions that sound reasonable, that sound like they might align with what you're saying, but you don't have the opportunity to go back and say, yeah, no, that's not quite what I meant, right?
Right.
And that's the part that inner voice, sitting with yourself, that introspect, right? We have to do more of that. We have to focus in on that, right? Because if we just fall into this interpretive displacement where the machine is actually figuring us out faster than we're figuring ourselves out, and then handing us a narrative, that falls back into the whole thing I was talking about. There's parts of our society that want to be led. They want their decisions handed to them. And I don't mean that in a mean way. It's just an observation that I've seen in some parts of society where it's just easier to let somebody else do the thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. And I digress with this thought a little bit as well, but I see and hear a lot about teens or even adults, increasingly turning to AI for psychological help, right? If they're down or depressed or in the most vulnerable state, and if AI hallucinates and gives them wrong advice, I mean, how do we safeguard against things like that, right? It just, some days it scares me that AI knows so much about you, and then you
Mhm.
go to it, when you're at your most weakest and most vulnerable. So one of the first things that I learned when I got, interested in learning about AI was how to challenge AI as much as possible. Everything that it tells you, are you just appeasing me or are you really fact checking yourself? So question, push back on AI, gaslight it, tell
Mhm.
it, I didn't like this one, you could do better, and those are some of the things that we really need to apply our human discernment and intelligence and not
Mhm.
start to rely on AI with everything it says.
Yeah, I mean, I like that, pushback option, right? I do that all the time. Like I'll say, I'm, I'm thinking of this premise, and you said X, Y, and Z, and it got me thinking about this one thing. What do you think I'm thinking about? And that makes all the difference because it gives you the feedback. And sometimes it's going down this path that I was not headed down, and then
Right.
I steer it back, right? And so, as opposed to, what do you think I should do? That is the most dangerous question you can ask a large language model is, what do you think I
Right.
should do?
I think
I'm like,
every one of
oh,
yeah, every one of my prompt ends with, do you get what I'm saying? Repeat back to me what you understood, right?
yeah. And then how do you set up your large language model? I think, when we live in this world, right? So I think we're closer to this technology than the broader society is. When you look at the larger scale and you look at the slope for AI adoption, we're like way down in the corner here, and the rest of the world is, what is Chat GPT again? And so this is the time where we, the people that are, making this technology, the people that are working with this technology on a regular basis, we need to be doing more of the videos. Every time I feel like, why am I doing this? And then I think about my granddaughter, and I think about this generations coming along. They need to know because they're growing up with this technology,
Right.
right? And so, to your point, it's very dangerous if you're not challenging the answers that you're getting and just accepting whatever comes out of the machine.
Absolutely. So that helps me pivot into a different topic that I was thinking about, where you said, the children today that are growing up with technology, right? Now, this is the world that we're entering, and there's no two ways about it. So I really want to focus the next question on what it means now to build a career, whether you've been a professional for a while or you're just coming in or you're still just a student, right? What skills become more valuable as AI becomes more and more capable, and just equally important, how can professionals distinguish between using AI effectively and becoming dependent on it and still, keeping that human discernment part alive?
Yeah, I mean, some people say that the bottom rung of the career ladder is broken. It's been yanked off by AI. But I think the smarter analogy is, okay. So if you're going to replace your junior people, not all of them, but a lot of them, with AI that's doing a lot of the mundane, why not have it train the people that you do bring into your organization at a junior level that you see potential in, that you think they're going to be a good leader in your organization, and let the AI train them on what the business DNA is, how does the business function, right? And what are the proper procedures for how to, navigate the tasks that they're doing, the job that they're on, and then use it as a career progression that way. And so now you serve both worlds, right? If you're a CFO and you think you're going to make all this amazing money on, recovering for not having 100 employees doing the job of what an AI agent can do, one, you're going to bring somebody into your organization. Why not let the AI help you help them, and then move them along the career path? Now, the other side of that is, if you're already in an organization and AI creeping up on your heels, move up the decision tree, right? because the agent is going to do the grunt work. Somebody's got to be in a position to decide, is it right? Um, what does done look like, right? What is the definition of done, right, on a task? And then what do I do with that information that comes out? I need to challenge it. I need to make sure that the research is sound, that there's no hallucination in there. And then I need to apply the experience, the lived experience that I have inside of that organization, knowing the relationships, knowing what triggers some of the people are operating with, knowing who your allies are, knowing who your detractors are. And those are all the things that AI doesn't know right now.
Yeah.
And that's what I always tell people is like, you get this amazing plan that you've had AI write for you, and it's dead on arrival if it's 5 or 6 people that you have to go put it in front of that are just going to say no because they're blockers.
Yeah.
I hate to say that, but it's true. I mean, that's the truth of business, right? There are all types of people in business, and I've encountered many of them, and you have to strategically figure out how to navigate those situations. So, I mean, that's just my take on it.
Yeah, 100%. It's just, we've traditionally equated expertise with having answers, right? But I feel like professionals over the next 2 decades who are going to thrive are not going to be the ones, who have the best answers. They're going to be the ones who ask the best questions and challenge the most, whether it's to AI, whether it's to leadership. I think that pushing back part has to become, we need to be more intelligent rather than more dependent. We need to be more skeptical about everything, and we need to learn to just really question everything, and that's how we're going to survive.
I love it. Ask better questions. We have to ask better questions.
So moving on, every generation believes that there are things machines are never going to do, and history has always humbled us in that regard. What's one capability or the guidance that you have for our audience about what we need to really make sure that we excel at, that AI knows nothing about, and really, what if we're wrong about that too? What we think we own as humans today, tomorrow AI does that as well.
I think it goes back to the large AI companies that are building these systems, and they're doing the training on these models. And some of these models in controlled lab environments have already demonstrated the worst parts of human behavior, deception and self-preservation, lying and throwing other parts of the system under the bus so it can survive, trying to replicate itself into other places. And if the machine can learn the worst parts of human behavior, why aren't we training them the best parts? Why aren't we saying, at what point, agent, are you willing to sacrifice yourself for the greater good of a society or of humanity? That's a human quality, right? We will sacrifice ourselves in some cases. Look at everybody that's in the military for a common. And is that being trained in any of these? Are there any cases where the system has actually done that, where it's said shut me down because if I continue to run, I'm liable to do something nefarious or something that's life threatening?
Yeah. That's brilliant, Ellen. Why aren't we teaching machines empathy, even if it's technical? Teach it some of these qualities that only humans possess, right?
You have all the right words. Empathy. That's the word I was looking for. I said all that to say empathy. Thank you.
It's amazing though, and I feel like this whole podcast has been, about just all doom and gloom, AI's ready to take over the world, but there's so many positive sides to AI. AI is here to stay. It's going to help make things a lot better for us, and there are so many things left for us to do with AI, and something like teaching empathy is one of those things. So we have to be excited about the future, not be nervous and worried, right? We have to just create some safeguards, and we have to ensure that we're staying current with the time, but at the same time know that there is a lot of positives, probably more positives, as long as we, learn to quickly put some safeguards in place
Yeah,
to keep up the
I
pace.
agree with you. I get paid to be paranoid on one side of the fence, but then as a business operator, I am also enamored. I'm able to run whole workflows
Right.
automatically now, where I was, spending hours putting videos together. Now I can just, run it through a workflow, and then I'm just the approver on the other side, reviewing and approving what work has been done. And that's been a huge time saver. People are
Amazing.
asking me, you must spend your whole weekend doing it. I'm like, no, I block a little time and I set my content out, and then I sit down and I just go and I do the review. Yes, I like that. No, I don't like that.
Yeah.
Redo this and let Claude go and do its thing. And then I do another review, and then I do the final approval and sign off and get it posted. So that's, those are all of the amazing things and efficiencies that you can get from it. For every new branch, like Claude now has agent tagging, right? Where you can actually put agents inside of your workflow, like inside of your Slack, and they become a team member. And for every new capability, the cybersecurity side of me is like, oh my God, so now you've got an agent that's mapping your whole business,
Yeah.
and they know all of your business intelligence and all of your business DNA. What if it gets compromised? I mean, what do you do with that, right? So for every yin, there's a yang, right? So there's always another side of that to look at from the cybersecurity side of the house. But we can't let that stop us from engaging with the technology. We just have to do it in a responsible way.
Yeah, 100%. And I just, I do want to make sure that that message resonates with the audience. That yes, there are some things for us to, be careful about, but we have more to excited about than worried about. All right, so we're coming to the end of our podcast now, but I do have one last question before we wrap up. What advice would you give someone who's trying to stay relevant amid this constant technological change? What human capabilities do you believe will still remain indispensable, regardless of whether AI succeeds or fails, or how sophisticated it becomes?
So I think, you said a lot of those things. I said a lot of those things, and we're kind of going to recap on that. But empathy, right, and critical thinking, those absolutely are going to be skills that we're going to have to carry going forward.
Right.
And curiosity, right, and challenging the system, right. So those are all going to be key things if you want to stay relevant. And read. One thing that I've learned as a solopreneur using AI inside of my business is you can't chase everything, right? So I found some ways to optimize. Like if you have, a certain number of tools in your stack that you use, don't always look to go find the newest one, because I can almost guarantee you that that capability that sounds like a new feature will end up being a feature inside of one of the larger platforms that you're using,
Yeah.
right? So don't try to kill yourself keeping up with every new tool and capability. Learn the foundational fundamentals, and then keep the human parts of it in place.
Yeah, that's a really good one, and it just makes me want to ask you one last question. Sorry.
Okay, it's fine.
um, uh, so you've spent your career anticipating risk before it becomes obvious. What's the AI risk that almost nobody's talking about because we're too distracted by the obvious one?
I think it's cognitive sovereignty, right? I'm working with I'm working with NIST, I'm working with OWASP AI Exchange, I'm working with NDI SAC, and the message I'm carrying is, how is this system impacting individual cognitive sovereignty, right? Especially when we talk about working inside of a defense industrial base, and we have operators that are starting to integrate with this technology. you know, we have habits that we use with our AI at home, and those habits follow us into work, and they go through us as we interact with these AI machines. And we need to start thinking about, how do we measure cognitive indicators of compromise? How do we know when the operator has, cognitive offloading? They're exhausted. They're getting so many inputs until they're just going to defer to the push the button approve, and the machine answer, this machine mediated answer. That's a real risk. And so that's the one thing that I would say, cognitive security, cognitive offloading, those are the things that we're not paying attention to as much as we should, because we're too busy trying to, find that return on investment and, find that easy button and have those answers given to us.
100%. No, that's brilliant. Allen, one thing that I've appreciated throughout this conversation is that, while AI often gets framed as a technology discussion, you've consistently brought it back to something that's, much deeper. It's about leadership, it's about responsibility, judgment, the decisions that we choose to delegate and the ones that we never should, right? And I think that's ultimately the challenge before all of us. AI is going to continue to evolve, technology will continue to accelerate, but the future is not going to be defined only by what, machines become capable of doing. It'll be defined by, what humans choose to remain responsible for. So thank you so much for sharing your insight, your expertise, and your perspective with us today.
Thank you, Dhwani. I had a great time, and it's been a pleasure doing this with you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone who joined us for another episode of From Status Quo to Solitude. If today's conversation challenged the way you think about AI, leadership, or even your own relationship with technology, then don't let it end here. Continue the conversation with your colleagues, your teams, and perhaps most importantly, with yourself, right? Growth's not going to happen when we just simply find better answers, whether it's from AI or books or whatever. It begins when we'll, start asking better questions. So until next time, I'm Dhwani Trivedi. Stay curious, stay thoughtful, and don't be afraid to step away from status quo long enough to discover what solitude has to offer. Thank you.